Hello, and welcome to the third episode of the Handmade with Heart podcast. Today I'm chatting with my dear friend Amanda, who runs the small shop, Glue and Stitch. We've done many craft shows together, and she has a wealth of knowledge about running a small business. Stay tuned to listen to us chat about craft show setup, custom orders, and what we binge watch while we're crafting. Hello everyone, welcome to the Handmade with Heart podcast. I'm your host Dana, and I own the small business Scrappy Stitch. Have you ever wanted to know more about some of your favorite small businesses? Follow along as I interview other creative small business owners. We'll talk about getting started, what an average day for a creator is like, tips and tricks, and of course everything is handmade with heart. Hey, good morning Amanda, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us how you got started?
All right, well, my name is Amanda Kozbud, and I am the maker and owner of a small handmade business called Glue and Stitch. I've been in business since the end of 2018, so it's like a little over 3 years now. I actually had two hobbies I combined into one business. That's why I'm called Glue and Stitch. So I make paper crafted items, specifically paper crafted little home decor shelf sitter signs. And I also take my love of sewing and I create bags. So I have the gluing and the stitching.
How did you get into making the signs?
When my 8-year-old was a newborn, I just really struggled with like postpartum depression. And I needed a way to be creative because I just didn't like going to work and leaving my son at home, and I had a hard time. And so like as a way to like kind of channel that frustration and everything, when I would come home and he was sleeping, I would do paper crafting. So I had a silhouette, which most people know what a Cricut is, like paper vinyl cutting. I got a silhouette for Christmas, and it was sort of before the Cricut allowed you to maybe be as creative as it does now. So the silhouette would allow you to make your own designs, type things, and then it would cut out paper and vinyl for you. So I started making cards. I used to be a scrapbooker way back in the day before I had kids.
Yeah, me too.
and back when I had time for it. So I had this excess of paper. And so I started cutting it up with a silhouette and making cards. And I made just little sayings with vinyl. And I decided that cards were cool, but like, what if you put this on something you could like display that wasn't a card? And since I don't know how to do anything with wood, I found these little canvases and I painted them just in like a solid color. And then I would take out the paper crafted item, kind of like a card that I'd made, and glue it onto the canvas. So they became little shelf stacking signs. And it was kind of different because they weren't just like a hand painted thing. You could see all the layers of paper that had been glued on there and the vinyl. So there was a little bit of dimension to it. And I found you could like stack them on top of each other. You could hang them up on the wall with just like a little command strip because it's a 4-inch canvas. So it's really light. And that's how I got started with that. They were all over my house. My husband's like, what if you sold them? I was like, oh, maybe.
Yeah.
So that's where that came from. And I started a lot making those canvases for Halloween because Halloween was like my favorite holiday to decorate for, even though I'm not like super into costumes or trick-or-treating. Like I just thought it was so fun to like make cute things for it.
Yeah.
So the signs actually like have taken some time to develop to make them last a little bit longer. There's like a technique that I've developed to like glue them. The only sort of downside to the signs is they are paper. So they are, if they're in humidity, they can warp. So they're not really for putting in a bathroom or anything like that, anywhere that's like very humid. With like outdoor shows, the signs are not my favorite things to display because if it rains, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's water, and I have to like put them away.
Yeah.
But they're great for like a desk or like, you know, your home office, just putting on that little empty spot on the bookshelf. Just I try to do funny little sayings. I have a whole book of funny things I've heard or seen online, and just make quotes with that.
Nice.
or just do like cute little pictures of animals of paper I've cut out. I've kind of narrowed that down the way with the bags. There's certain papers I now buy because I know they'll hold up and they'll cut well, because like a sewing machine, sometimes the silhouette paper cutter can like kind of freak out and not like to cut certain things.
Yeah.
So anyone who's used a Cricut probably knows that same situation.
Yeah, I have a Cricut. I know what you mean. I have one of the older with the cartridges that go in it. They don't even make those anymore. Everything's all digital now with Cricut.
It's funny because like Silhouette, it was all digital. And when I got it, was kind of around the time, I think, could be wrong, this may not be the right fact, but it was around the time that I noticed that Cricut was no longer like cartridges, that it started to become online. That's why I use the Silhouette, because at the time, that was what I researched, that I found like, oh, you can just type in something in a font and it'll just cut it out for you, versus like I need to buy a cartridge and I'm tied into these like 50 designs and that's it.
Right.
So
how did you get started sewing?
So I got started sewing when I was pregnant with my daughter, who's now 5. So I've been sewing for about 6 years now. I was laid off from my job and I was pregnant, so I wasn't really looking for a new job right at that time. And I had a friend who said, why don't we take a sewing class together? Ooh. And I thought that'd be like a really good opportunity to learn how to use the sewing machine I'd had for years and couldn't figure out.
Right.
So took a class, learned how to sew a zipper, which was a total game changer.
I know a lot of people are scared of zippers.
Yeah, I know, right? I think they're the easiest thing to sew now.
Yeah, they're not bad if you have a zipper foot.
Exactly, you do need that. So once I learned how to sew a zipper, I made a pouch, and then I took another class at a local quilt shop that taught me how to make a large bag pattern, included zippers, just a ton of different techniques in bag making. And I was like totally hooked after that. And I realized I can make these quickly. They're really fun. They can all be different. I can use so much fun fabric that's out there. And so I started making bags and selling them.
Do you have any tips for anybody who might want to get started sewing or get into crafting or bag making?
Probably my first tip, if you really want to get into sewing and bag making, is find a place to take a class, someplace that will teach you how to do a zipper. And I think that's kind of the key, is learning how to do a zipper, but take a class, and that can really open up like the door to making bags. I think there's a lot of smaller places like local quilt shops that do it, or even some of the bigger chain stores have like beginner sewing classes, which is where I took my first sewing class. And then there's a lot of patterns out there that are very easy for beginners. And I would say, honestly, try to buy a pattern, because some of the free patterns are missing steps or they're not super well written. And if you're a beginner, it's really hard to figure that out. There are also some bag makers that have videos that go along with their patterns. And I would say buy a pattern that has a video too.
And now you teach sewing classes, right?
I do. So we have, there's a local quilt shop here in Phoenixville, and I teach a bag making class about once a month, usually a noodle head pattern, because they're sort of the simplest for beginners to use, or like a wallet pattern or something like that. I've also taught at another local quilt shop called Stitch Central. We've done noodle head patterns there as well. That shop's a little bit closer to Philadelphia. So in 2 different locations I've been teaching.
How did you get started teaching? I would be so nervous, I think.
So in my previous job, I have like a retail background. I spent like maybe like 12, 13 years in retail. And in the store that I worked in, which was a high-end culinary store, I taught cooking classes. So I kind of took that skill from teaching cooking classes into the sewing aspect.
Nice.
And I walked into this local quilt shop here in Phoenixville and was just chatting with them. And they were like, well, we're going to start teaching classes. Would you be interested in doing some in bags? And so that's where I got started.
Oh, that's awesome. When you're teaching a class, does everyone bring their own machine, or are there machines there at the shop that they use?
Pretty much people bring their machine,
Oh.
but they can use the sewing machine that's there.
Hmm.
I think it's good when people bring their own machine because then they can become comfortable doing the technique on the machine that they're going to take home with them.
That's true.
So if they're at home making the same thing, they'll know how it worked.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have been to your sewing room and it's absolutely beautiful.
Oh,
And
thank you.
you inspired me to redo my whole sewing room because mine is in my basement and it was just, ugh. Do you keep it organized and tidy all the time or
No.
my stuff is thrown everywhere.
So I have a very messy creative process. So I feel like I pull out all the fabrics, I pair them together, I start cutting, I throw the scraps on the floor.
Me too. My thread
And then
right on the floor.
once I'm completed with the item that I'm sewing, I have to completely clean it out, put everything away in order to start another creative process.
Nice.
So I wish it was clean all the time. I just don't work that way.
Right. Yeah, I don't either. Yeah, my stuff is everywhere. It's embarrassing.
I see pictures of people's sewing rooms on Facebook because there's actually a Facebook group for organized sewing rooms. And have pictures of different things you can do. And some of these sewing rooms look like stores.
I know. They do.
How do you
Straight out
keep
of
it
a
like
magazine. I know. It's crazy. Are you in a lot of sewing groups on Facebook?
So I joined the one for neat and organized sewing rooms. I joined this young millennial quilter group, which is really awesome for inspiration. And I'm part of Juki Junkies.
Yeah, you told me about that one.
Juki sewing machine, and they're the best group for troubleshooting when your machine goes crazy.
Yeah.
And then I'm part of the Bernina lovers group because I have a Bernina that I do my quilt piecing on. So
nice.
That's also been a good group for why is my machine freaking out?
Yeah. It's nice to be in different groups like that because there's always something you can learn, or if you're having problems, you can scroll back through and search to see if somebody else had the same problem and you can find the answer. I like that. I go on Reddit a lot. Have you been on Reddit?
A little bit. Actually, for Etsy, there's some good information as an Etsy seller, how to navigate it on Reddit.
Yeah. That, and then YouTube is a big one, to find a lot of how to make stuff. Do you have anything exciting coming up for your shop for this year?
Oh, this year. Well, so normally in the beginning of the year, I actually type up a list of goals, both for my business, personal, just everything. I actually didn't do it yet this year. When I did it last year, I actually reviewed it in December and I had hit 95% of my goals for the year. So that was awesome.
Yeah.
This year, I feel like I'm going to be more creative. My goal is to just be more creative and to do less, to be less busy, but more creative. So what I'd really like to incorporate into my business this year is a lot of quilt piecing because I find quilt piecing to be very relaxing. I'm super inspired creatively with that. So I'd like to put a lot of that into my bags. I felt like last year I did make a lot of the same thing over and over. And while that was nice, it kind of stifled my creativity a little bit. So this year I'd like to add all the quilt piecing in. So that might mean I have less items available, but they'll be more intricate. Probably spend a little more time on the bags this year and less time on the paper crafted items simply because I'm really struggling to find supplies. In particular, glue is hard to come by. Right glue for what I make. And it's become very expensive. So I'm still going to make the shelf sitter signs, but it's going to be much more bag focused this year.
Well, I have to say, because we met at a craft show, and I think your displays are amazing. You have such a good use of your space with height, your height differences, and it really makes your eye look at all of your items. How long did it take for you to perfect that?
Well, thank you. I try really hard to make my display very inviting and full. With my long retail background, visual merchandising was just one of my favorite things to do in my job. So I have taken that into my own display, and every inch is basically an opportunity to sell something.
Yeah.
So when you only have like an 8x5 space, you have to build up. So I like to use crates, like wooden crates, and stack them in a unique way. I like to make the display higher in the center and sort of go downhill on each side so it draws your eye in. I just try to keep things very accessible for the customer so it's easy to touch and you're not worried it's going to knock over the whole display, because then customers just won't really engage with your stuff. Right. My dad took some IKEA shelving and very generously built me a ladder so I can display some of my items.
Oh, nice.
So it was a really good way to put more of the little tiny signs on display and stack them up high, so customers could still pick them up. And then I have some ideas for this year to sort of make the bags a little bit more accessible for customers. Because I do think sometimes the customers are afraid to pick up the bag that it's going to like fall over. It's a lot easier to set up a display in a tent than when you're in an indoor show.
You have room to spread out.
Yeah. And now I've done enough shows where I know what can I fit in the 8x5 space? What can I fit in the 10x10 versus the 8x6 or whatever. Having a variety of tables is helpful. Table sizes, like I would say investing in like an 8-foot table, a 6-foot table, and a 4-foot table, you will find different opportunities to use those at different shows.
Yeah, definitely. I know for me, I have the main way that I set up. So if I know it's a 10x10, I know exactly how my things are going to go. Do you ever change it up?
So oftentimes I try to keep it the same. If I know that I'm low in inventory of like bags, I try to find a way to spread the signs out more. And I will change my display based on that.
Okay.
And I also, like, I've done a lot of the same shows now, so I know the customer base. And I know when I go to a certain show, this is the crowd that is going to like maybe the less expensive, smaller items versus the bags, and knowing what to showcase where. So I learned a lot about that last year. I think that was a very useful thing that I figured out.
Yeah. You do the majority of your shows solo, which I really admire because it's a lot harder to do a show by yourself. So do you have any tips for anybody who's going to do a show by themselves?
Try not to do it by yourself if you can.
Yeah.
But there's a couple different things I found. So really, I do the majority of my shows by myself because my husband was working out of state for 1.5 years. So he just wasn't available. And then my parents were watching my kids. He used to come to some shows with me, and he was very helpful at helping me set up the tent. But I have learned to set up the tent by myself. So I think if you need a tent for your show, practice at home and how to set it up. It's honestly easier to set up a tent on the grass versus on pavements by yourself.
Yeah.
So practice that. I would also say look at the map and see which vendors are going to be next to you. And if you know you're going to be alone, you can reach out to them ahead of time and ask them if they'll help you. I've gotten to know a lot of different makers now at these shows, and I have like reached out to them if I knew that they were either going to be there or nearby, that they would be able to at least help me with the tent. The other tip would be that when you break down, pack your stuff back in an organized way so that when you go to your next show, you know where everything is already and you don't have to worry about like digging through your boxes or where are things. It's just a lot easier to set up. And then I always just try to be there as early as I can on the day, like as early as you can set up. I try to be there at that time. One of the most challenging things I would say with a lot of these shows is like parking your car. If you're there by yourself, like you have to figure out, you know, setting it all up and then finding a place to park. And at some of the bigger shows, that's really tricky.
Yeah.
Parking can be limited, or if you're in a city.
Yeah, definitely. I like to get to know the person who's next door to me. So if I do have to run to the bathroom, you feel comfortable asking them to watch your money box.
Yeah.
Or have a way to bring all your cash with you.
Yeah.
Just in case.
I usually try to find a way to hide the money box if I have to, when I have to run to the restroom. To be honest, there's only been one 2 markets I've ever been at that I was like, oh, I don't think I should leave my stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've never had a problem, and I usually just try to be really quick.
Like you said, I definitely plan for extra time to set up. I know you've come to help me a couple times, like set up when I'm by myself. You're so speedy at setting your tent up. It's impressive.
If this tent breaks and I have to get a new one, I don't know what I'm going to do, because I've come to know this one very well.
Yeah. The other thing I do is I make sure I bring snacks with me just in case, you can't get away.
Usually there's like good food truck options. So it's a balance between, do I really want to take something, or do I really want that food truck that
absolutely.
day?
And sometimes the lines are really long, so it's harder, it's harder to get away if you're by yourself.
Sometimes shows are very nice, and they have organizers who will come around and ask you if you need a restroom break. So I'll take advantage of those when they happen too.
That's true too. Yeah. For your craft shows, do you try to do a certain number every month?
So last year I felt like I tried to do at least 2 a month. It was a lot, but this year I'm trying to do maybe 1 a month in the summer and then 2 a month in the fall. I don't think I'm really into trying very many new ones that I haven't done before this year. I kind of like to stick with what I know. And I find that actually my stuff does really well at vintage and maker combined market. I think that the prints of my fabric, like a lot of the vintage buyers tend to like, even though it's not vintage fabric, I think that it's popular. So I like to actually do those vintage maker combined markets a lot.
Do you do shows that have MLMs, or do you try to stay clear?
I try to stay clear.
Yeah, me too.
If 31 is there, it's not good for me.
Yeah.
So even though I do like a 31 bag every once in a while, but like it's not, I don't know. I think they're just run, like those shows are run totally differently than a maker's market.
Absolutely. I know. I was set up next to one and I showed up and it was all kinds of people. There was like a handful of handmade makers, but across from me was somebody selling used VCRs.
Oh.
And I thought, oh man, this is not going to be a good show.
Yeah.
At all. I think I sold one thing the whole day. It was crazy. So yeah, I try to stay away from those shows too. Some of them are okay. Like some of them really try to like limit it, but even those, it's just, I don't know. It's a different crowd of people. They're looking for more of a deal than they are looking for, supporting a handmade business. And a lot of times too, I know you've had it happen. I've had it happen. People come up and they ask you to cut them a deal and you usually stand your ground. The only time I gave somebody a deal was she came up and she bought almost all of the adult clothing protectors that I had made. And so she's like, well, what will you do for this? If I buy this many? And I was like, well, that's a lot. So I was like, okay, I did knock them down a little bit. And she did contact me that she was going to buy some more for the spring. So that was pretty cool.
I find it like, and even when I worked in retail, I found it kind of insulting when people asked for like a deal. And I get it in like a regular brick and mortar store in my retail job. I shouldn't have been insulted. It's just, I get that people want to spend their money wisely. Totally get that. But as a maker, I mean, there's a lot that goes into what you make, and it's not just the materials, and it's a lot of time, and there's a lot of energy, thought put into it. And I think that that's when someone's like, can you do better? I'm kind of like, it's the low, like, because I list my stuff as low as I feel like I possibly can and still make like some profit off of it. Trying to create a better margin this year would be sort of a goal for myself because I do spend a lot of time making these things, and I would like to make a little bit more profit than maybe I had made before, because I feel more confident in what I make now. And I know that the quality is there, and I don't know, more confident in my product. And I think that sometimes makers undersell their product and their skill. I mean, there's so many talented artists and makers at these shows, and sometimes I look at their prices, I'm like, oh my goodness, like if you had listed it another $10, I still would have bought it. Like, because I can't do that. I can't make that.
Right. I think people get excited because they're making a lot of sales. Like if they list their things for $15 less than what you and I, list our things for, or whatever, way less. And they're excited they're selling a lot of product, but it's not worth it to keep making it. And I don't understand how these people keep buying supplies. There's these blankets that people make that I was going to start making. And when I sat down and worked out how much I should be charging for them, I usually go on Etsy and see, is it comparable, or, what are other people charging, to make sure I'm in the right ballpark. And people were selling them for way less. And I just thought, I can't even buy the supplies for that. So they're clearly not charging for their time. I just don't understand what makes, people continue to charge such low prices for things. And some things were even customized, like they had customized embroidered names on the blankets, and it was still cheaper than what I was going to charge. And I just thought, oh my word, like,
yeah.
And then then you take the Etsy fees out.
Yeah.
So you're really not making anything. That's just craziness to me. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And the free shipping that's you kind of have to offer on Etsy in order to be searchable.
Right.
That's that eats into your cost. And like, unfortunately, I have to raise my prices on Etsy versus in person, or if you just contact me directly and I send you an invoice. Like,
yeah, I know a lot of people that do that have different prices, in person at craft shows versus on Etsy. Their items are a little bit more expensive. And it makes sense. It's you have to, because you have to pay for the shipping. So I was talking to somebody when Etsy first started doing the free shipping thing, and they were like freaking out about it. And I said, well, it shouldn't come out of your profit. You have to raise your prices. It's like a marketing thing where people think they're getting free shipping. And it's been proven that they would rather pay a higher price and get free shipping than pay the actual price and then add shipping in, where really it's like the same, evens out the same.
I feel fortunate, at least the stuff that I am shipping, it's not expensive to ship. Like, I don't make candles or wood signs that would weigh just a lot, and your shipping would be high. But I mean, it does make the prices on my Etsy shop maybe like $2 higher just to help cover that. And also, just in the last 2 years, the price of fabric and interfacing, which I know a lot of people maybe don't know what interfacing is, but it's basically a fabric with some glue on it that's a little bit thicker that you iron on to regular fabric to make it sturdier and stiffer and stand up as a bag. That's very expensive too. So between the prices of those two things going up, it's definitely been a little bit more challenging in setting the prices for the completed items.
Do you buy your shipping labels through Etsy?
So I do buy them through Etsy sometimes, but I have found another website that I found on an Etsy Facebook group called Pirate Ship.
Yeah, I use Pirate Ship.
I use that. And it's sometimes a little bit cheaper than Etsy, but also it has more options than Etsy. Like it'll give you different ways to ship things, which is kind of nice. And so I'll buy the labels through those.
Yeah, I really like Pirate Ship too. Adrian told me about Pirate Ship actually, and I was like, oh, this is awesome.
And it's free to set up an account.
Yes.
So, I even do like personal shipping through that now, like for Christmas gifts and stuff. So,
And I think it's nice too because you can drop it off yourself if you want, or you can set up so that they'll come and pick everything up from your door. So for a while, when I was selling masks, instead of running to the post office every day, I would just put them out front, and then the night before, put in, I have X number of packages, and they'd come and take them and then ship them. It was great. It was so nice.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's so nice. It's so easy to set up too. And it's a very user-friendly website, I feel like.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, even if you have to go to the post office, you can at least just shove them in the box now. You don't have to like stand in line and buy a label.
Yeah, and I know some post offices have the kiosk, but a lot of times ours is broken where I live. So that's another reason why I went to Pirate Ship. That's really easy too. If you already have a label that you bought through Pirate Ship, you can go in and scan your package so that it's scanned. So if the person is watching, they're tracking, they can see that I personally dropped it off. But you can also, through the kiosk, weigh your items and buy your labels right there too. So that's sort of nice. But like I said, mine's usually broken.
I have found a small post office in the town, like right next to mine that I drive to. It's only another like 2 minutes away from my house. The most helpful guy works there, and
That's nice.
He'll help you track packages. I mean, he's just so helpful. So I would say if you can develop a relationship with your postal worker, it's really, really good. Now I just hand him the packages and can leave. And I know 100% he scans them right there.
Have you ever had packages get lost where people contact you?
I would say only like 2 ever were just totally like gone forever. Normally I've had them show up. Usually if you search for a lost package on USPS for some reason, after you've like said that it's lost, it seems to appear. So I have no idea why that is, but that's always my first step. And I try not to panic now when I'm like, realize it's like stuck somewhere. But I would say those 2 packages were back in like the end of 2020.
Okay.
A lot of things were sort of lost.
You feel like you're in the middle because you did your part, to mail the package out, and it's not your fault that it got lost. But on the other hand, then, there's an upset customer, and what do you do? Because I know there's some people that say, well, that's the customer's problem. They have to figure it out and talk to their post office and file the complaint. And then, there's other people that just refund them or make them a new item right away. And I know when it's happened to me, I helped the person file the claim that it was lost in the mail. But then I just waited a couple extra days and it did end up showing up, which was lucky because I had like no more of that fabric left. They ordered a custom thing and I was so upset, but it ended up, the package was found and delivered then a couple days later, because you don't want bad reviews either on something that's not even really your fault.
Yeah, I think that it's important to just do as much as you can for the customer, because now that I've been through it, like I tend not to panic as much, like if it says it's lost, because I know that there's steps I can try to take to help the customer that like before all this, if I was a customer, I have no idea. So I try to do everything I can, filing the claim, being very like open with communication with them about it. But there is like this fear of like when you put it in this mailbox, okay, it's out of my hands now. Like, I hope it gets there.
Yeah.
I've started shipping some things just UPS if I know it's very unique. It's like I can't make this again because I feel like I've had better success sometimes, but it does, well, it costs a tiny bit more, but not always. So
do you do insurance on your packages?
Depends on what it is, but sometimes, like that the bigger custom pieces I do. Because like if it's fabric that you just can't find anymore. I don't know that customers always realize that fabric is printed for a very limited amount of time. So once it's gone, like you can't find it again. I had no idea when I started because I had this particular gnome fabric I really loved when I started my business, and I bought like 2 yards and made what I could. And then like 6 months later, I was like, oh, that was cool. I should buy more. Well, that was really popular. And they don't make it anymore. I know. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So it's sort of just this limited time offering. Once it's gone, it's gone.
I know. That is a bummer because there's some fabrics that do really well that I've had and you just can't get them anymore. How did you get into the shops that you're in?
It's actually interesting. Last year, when I went into Kindred Collection, it was because the owner of Kindred Collection reached out to me on Etsy and said, I like your stuff. I own a shop in Columbia. She was like, I'd love for you to take a look at my shop. And so I went in and saw it, and it's really cool. It's just a very unique shop full of other makers, and you rent a little space and you sell your stuff there. And you pay rent each month, and they take a very small percentage of your sales. And it's a good way to make money without having to constantly go set up at a show. So you do have to like go maintain the shop, like maintain your space. At this point, I'm having a hard time like keeping up with inventory for there's shops. So that's something that you have to keep in mind too, because if you're going to set up in a shop, you have to be able to stock the shop and the markets and your Etsy shop. So, like, it is a lot of inventory to have on hand.
Yeah. You do a lot of custom orders. How do you get your customers?
I tend to get a lot through social media. I'll post a picture of something I made and then kind of have like a little call to action in the caption saying I can do a custom order. So that's where I get a lot of them. So when I post a picture of something that I make, if I have a customer who sees it, they're like, oh, I love that style. Sometimes they'll message me and I'll just say, what colors do you like? I can make it for you, whatever color, and kind of talk to them that way. I have a sign that I put out at craft shows saying I do custom orders. So on my display, I like to have one of each style of the bags I make.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So that the customers can see these are the different options. This is the size that works for me, the style, but maybe I need a zipper, like, and so then we talk through that. But I would say the majority of it comes through social media, mostly Instagram, because that's where I spend the most time. On my Etsy shop, there's an option for like custom orders. So I do get some that way. And then I have my own website that I never use.
Yeah.
It is part of my plan this year to get it more functional so that I can maybe leave Etsy and just have my own website, save money that way. There is an option on there for custom orders. So there's also some word of mouth I found. Customers who've had custom bags made and then they show it to their friend and then they'll email me. I really like custom orders because it sometimes sparks creativity that I wouldn't have, like in a way I wouldn't have thought of before. Somebody picks a fabric and I'm like, wow, I wouldn't have just naturally picked that on my own. I like what they came up with. And then we can work through the process of how that's going to be built into a bag. Sometimes they pick something and I'm like, oh, well, let's see what we can do. That's very rare, but every once in a while it happens. Because I don't think customers realize that not everything works on the bag that they're envisioning, because if a print is too big, it may not fit on the size of the bag. So you would lose what the print is supposed to be. Some bags require a lot of pieces cut up and then re-sewn back together, so you can lose the print. Or sometimes colors just don't necessarily go together. It's fun to work through the process and come up with something together with the client. Like, I really do enjoy that.
Yeah.
I've narrowed it down over the last year. I have very specific places I like to order my fabric from because I know that the quality is there, that the fabric is going to work for the item that's being made. I know that the fabric is printed straight. Sometimes fabric has prints that's totally crooked and there's nothing you can do to make it work with what you're trying to do. Just thinking about shops or places I order the fabric from that I know will ship in a timely manner. So I've started to really narrow down where I order the fabric from. And I've developed some relationships with some local quilt shops, like the ones I teach in, or some online fabric shops. And I can also get them to pair things for me together. Like if I have this one main print I want on a bag, shopping for fabric online is hard to see if the colors match. So I'll ask them to pair together some options for the lining that I can't necessarily see online.
Oh, that's nice. When you buy fabric, how do you know how much to buy? Like, do you just buy what you're working on maybe for the month or so? Because I'm trying to scale back how much fabric I buy. Because I used to just, whatever I liked, I would just buy a yard or two of this and that. And I have bins and bins and bins of fabric in my sewing room.
I tend to just buy a yard because I know what I can get out of a yard. I know how many bags, depending on the style, I can get out of a yard. However, if it's like a rifle paper company fabric, which is super popular, I'll buy like 2 to 3. I have kind of tried to scale back on how much I'm buying because I'm trying to use through my stash.
Yeah.
Other than fabrics for linings of bags, which tend to be a little bit more neutral or solids or tiny prints that I can use over and over. But I know like I can get a certain number of bags out of a yard. So that's kind of what I go with. I sort of been looking at the price and like kind of keep a price point in mind so that I know that the bags can all sort of consistently remain the same price. Like I know this style is always going to be $58. If I started buying fabric that was just really expensive, I wouldn't be able to hold that price point. So.
Yeah, it does make it difficult because fabric, you can get fabric for $4 a yard or you can get it for $27 a yard, depending on where you get it. So I try to stay in the middle there around, 8 to 10-ish. That's what I try to look for.
And I specifically, my bags, I really stick to denim. I have like a high quality indigo denim that I use for most things. I will also use linen, like an Essex yarn dyed linen or quilting cotton or canvas. I just haven't ventured into the world of like waxed canvas. I know a lot of people do that and that it looks really pretty. But I'm kind of trying to keep myself in the quilting cotton denim. Yeah. I like my bags to be washable. So as long as they don't have like a leather handle on them. And then I've not had great success with cork. So I envy that you make things with cork. So I just try to stick in those types of fabric. I haven't ventured out yet.
I think a lot of people think, oh, well, you sew. So can you do this for me or can you do that? And it's like, well, there's different kinds of sewing. Like there's quilting, there's bag making, there's making clothing, it's all different. And a lot of people ask me to make things and it's like, okay, but then I got to find a pattern. I got to learn how to do it. There's a lot to it than just slapping some fabric together and running it through your machine,
Well, exactly. I think when people think you can sew, they really, like you said, don't realize like, you can't just sew anything. Like people who make clothing, I admire. Like I have no idea how you do that. It's totally a different skill.
It is.
And I don't understand like how the patterns work. That's why I like quilt piecing and bag making. To me, it's very like precision sewing, straight lines, cutting accurately. Like, I don't know. I like that precision part of it. I don't want to like be sewing blindly with like a curve and
Right. How much time do you spend on social media?
I try to post every other day. I probably spend too much time on social media, but I don't know, maybe like an hour a day. I do use Instagram now the way that I used to use Pinterest for creative inspiration. I think that Pinterest got like very hard to navigate. And while I used to go on there for like videos and tutorials, I find that Instagram has better options for that. And sometimes just seeing a quick picture for even like a quilt, like, oh, I love that color combination. I wonder what that fabric is. And then just kind of go down that rabbit hole. So I basically ditched Pinterest and I use Instagram for that. So not only just posting and promoting my business or even keeping up with like friends and relatives, but I use it for that creativity now. Videos are not my thing. I wish I was better at posting videos. I admire that you post awesome videos. Like,
thanks.
I don't even know how to do that. I would spend like any video I've made, I've spent way too much time making because it's just really hard to do.
Yeah.
I would like to get better at doing that, but kind of lower on my list.
Do you do the Instagram reels?
I do. I like the reels because they're short, but I do find that sometimes I have a hard time fitting in what I need to fit in. It'll be like 47 seconds and it needs to be 30. And I'm like, I don't know how to edit out 17.
I find I have a lot better engagement in my Instagram stories.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like when I do Instagram post, and I'll get, some likes and stuff like that. But when I do my Instagram story, do you go in and check and see like who looked at it? Yeah. I'll sometimes go in and check and see, and it's like, wow, that's a lot of people that are watching my Instagram
Yeah.
stories, you know? I definitely do most of my posting, I think, on Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah.
And do you have a separate account for like personal?
For Instagram, I do have a separate
I do too.
one for personal, mostly about who I follow. Usually
me
there's
too.
like people I actually know personally.
Yeah.
And then my business one is people who are other makers, similar businesses, local events,
Mhm.
things like that. I have sort of thought about my Instagram feed is almost like a resume, because when you apply to a show, you have to put up your social media. And like, I think one of the factors for getting into a juried show is they want to see you have a social media presence. They want to see your skill, what you make, like your style, because a lot of shows you get into, they expect you to do some of the advertising. You know, you need to post saying, this is where I'm going to be. Come see who else is going to be there. This is what I'm going to bring with me. And so I think that sometimes what I post on Instagram is almost like thinking about, what do I really want to show people I am making right now that they could order, or like be that creative inspiration for somebody else. I guess that's sort of how I think of Instagram posts. And then my stories are sort of like, this is the random thing that happened today.
Yeah.
Almost in a way to show like I am a real person too. Like it's not just bags or signs.
Right. Right.
And then Facebook, I don't spend as much time on Facebook, but I do know that a lot of customers do look at my Facebook. Sometimes people they do one, not the other.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. I spend definitely the least amount of time on Facebook. I only go on Facebook if I see I have like a message.
Facebook can be very good for finding markets to do.
Yes.
So say you click on you're interested in going to a market in like a certain town around a certain date. If you look underneath, there'll be like 25 more that are happening around the same time, date, whatever. So it gives you options of other ones to apply to that you may not have just like stumbled upon on your own, or even heard about through word of mouth. So it is pretty useful for that.
Now we have a slightly maybe embarrassing love of the same interest that brought us together.
We do.
You know where I'm going with this.
I do.
90 Day Fiance.
That's
do you
true.
watch that while you're crafting, or do you watch something else? Yes.
No, I do. My guilty pleasure is just watching really bad reality TV.
I know,
and
it's so bad, but
I
so
like to watch it. Well, really kind of listen to it when I am sewing. Little problematic with some of these 90 Day Fiancés where they're very heavily subtitled.
Yes.
I have to pay attention to sewing, not the screen. I don't want to sew over my finger, but I just find it very relaxing to watch very bad TV while I craft.
Yeah, it's nice to put it on because you don't have to be totally involved in the story. Like if you miss stuff, oh well, whatever. It's just stupid, mindless TV, you know? But
exactly.
Why is it so good to watch?
I don't know. I think because it's like kind of a train wreck.
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes me feel better about my life sometimes.
We were DMing all morning about it.
Well, we talk about them like it's like we know them personally at this point.
So funny. I tried to watch Mr. Bean one time while I was sewing. Have you ever watched Mr. Bean?
A long time ago.
Okay, well, it's all visual comedy. So, because I think I first tried to watch 90 Day and it was all like a lot of subtitle. I was like, okay, I'm getting nowhere with this. So then I was like, I could really watch Mr. Bean right now. So I put it on, but he doesn't talk at all. So I'm like sewing and it just wasn't working because you just heard a laugh track going off the whole time. So
right.
Well, that didn't work. Sometimes I just sew in complete silence. I honestly think I like that the best. I tried to do audiobooks also because I really like to read and I thought that would be a good way to pass the time. But again, it's hard to pay attention, I feel like, to both things. And then 20 minutes go by and I'm like, well, what's going on in this story? I have to rewind it.
I think I need something that, like, just like you said, doesn't take a lot of involvement. It's sort of funny or entertaining to listen to, but I don't have to think very hard. And that's
Right.
one why I like reality TV.
Yeah.
Don't have to think. I don't really do movies very well either because I want to know what's happening, and I'll spend too much time looking away from what I'm doing and looking at this screen. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. Netflix is good because it'll, like, if it has the shows, it'll keep going, but I'm kind of picky about the shows, I guess.
Yeah.
So I end up with like Bravo and TLC on. So
Yeah.
that's my deep, dark secret of what I like to watch.
Yeah, me too.
Kind of embarrassing.
We both just recently got our DBAs.
Yes, well, I'm in the process of
you're in the process. Okay.
Still waiting on the mail.
Yeah, it took a little longer than I thought. So if you don't know, a DBA is you're doing business as, or a fictitious name. From what I understand, you don't necessarily need to have one, but it's preferred that you have one. And if you want to open like a business checking account or get a business loan, and your name is not in the title, like mine is Scrappy Stitch. So I don't have my name in my title of my shop. So they're not going to open a business account for you. So you need to get a DBA, which was really easy to do. It was easy to fill out the paperwork and submit it. Did you do yours online or did you?
No, I mailed it in.
Me too.
So I'm still waiting.
Yeah, I mailed mine in too. I was really surprised after filing for mine how many scam papers I received. I started getting mail for Scrappy Stitch. So these companies or people, I don't even really know who they are, they start sending me mail. So watch out for this.
Oh, geez.
And it's like urgent action required. You need to have the labor law papers posted in your place of business. $90 and something, to get these forms sent to you. And I was like, what? Like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And then I got something else that said, your certificate of good standing, you can mail away for that. And that was like another $80 fee. And I was like, no, wait, what is this? So the papers look very legit. It looks serious. They want you to do it right away. But then if you go on the website where you file for your DBA, it shows that you, first of all, don't need those things. And you can get them through that website either for free or for half the price of what these other people are trying to sell them to you for. It made my heart stop because it's not cheap to have a small business,
Right.
So getting all of these things cost money. And then I thought, oh my gosh, what did I do? I'm going to have to spend more and more and more money. But yeah, so watch out for that.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
So I didn't even really know what a DBA was until I went to open a bank account because I was trying to keep my business expenses separate from our family finances just to keep it all easier and be a little more legitimate, I guess, that way. I heard all you had to do was take your EIN, your ID and all that, and they would set it up.
Yeah.
Well, my EIN has my name on it and it has my business. So they couldn't set up a business account. So I got frustrated and was like, I'll deal with this later. So like 2 years later, I tried dealing with it again.
Yeah.
Different bank, same situation. So I was like, okay, I need to do this so I can set it up with just glue and stitch on it. The problem is that people would write checks for payment and they would make it out to glue and stitch. And then I couldn't cash it. So in order to be able to have a bank account with your business, you need like the DBA in order to open that bank account so you can cash the check. So that was like the main driver for that, as to why I was trying to do it. So until that paperwork comes in the mail. There's just so many things that like I didn't realize with starting like a small handmade business that you needed to do. And I'm really thankful. My parents have a small business. They have an automotive restoration shop. And so they went into business about 10 years ago for themselves. So my mom has been very helpful and like, this is how you set up for sales tax. This is how you pay your sales tax. Like just all those different things that you don't think about when you're like, I'm just going to start an Etsy shop and see what happens.
Right.
There's a lot that goes into it. And Etsy takes care of a good chunk of it for you. especially if you're selling out of, you're shipping orders out of state and stuff. But when you start selling in person in the state you live in, there's different steps you need to take that I hadn't known about.
And a lot of craft shows, you do need your tax ID number. You need to write that down to show that, you are submitting the proper tax, whether it be sometimes it's 4 times a year, sometimes it's once a year, sometimes it's twice a year. And every different state has different rules. And so that is very confusing. You're right. Etsy does take care of a good chunk. Well, our time is almost up. Do you have your random fact for me?
When I was thinking about this, I was looking at sewing machines, and I found sort of an interesting fact about sewing machines. The first ever inventor to become a millionaire was the people who invented the sewing machine.
Really?
Yeah. Well, not that they totally invented it, but they patented their invention. So it was, their patent was applied in 1850s. And then because of the Civil War and needing uniforms, they had to have a whole lot of sewing machines produced. And so they became some of the first ever millionaires from being an inventor. I thought was interesting.
That is super cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
And one of them was Singer.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So.
Everyone knows Singer. Yep.
Right. These were the inventors that made the sewing machine more mainstream as to what we know it is today. So, yeah.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you around at craft shows, and we have to get together soon to have another sewing date.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Handmade with Heart podcast. You can find Amanda at Glue and Stitch, and you can find me at Scrappy Stitch and also the Handmade with Heart podcast. We'll see you next time.